I've never trusted sentences that come too easily. Language is a trickster. Once words slip past your lips or settle in your brain, they pretend to be thought, and thought pretends to be truth. For 2 decades, I translated the nervous dreams of bureaucracies, dictations from regimes that feared their own reflections. I learned early to weigh every phrase like a diver tests their air valves. Anything loose could kill you. That principle steadied me as I knelt inside the airlock on Verge's salvage deck, syncing my Vespa exosuit with the pulse of my body. Smart fabric hardened when my heart stuttered, then softened a microsecond later. A second skin, most of the crew said, a comfort. I felt only the tight choreography of containment. Across from me, Pota Zakovsky struggled with his helmet seals. He was 27 and had not yet learned the shape of disappointment. Still thought exploration meant wonder, not just new cages. He was eager, twitchy, glanced at me with that familiar tick, a twitch of the nose, the question in his eyes. All green? Green enough, I replied, the helmet rendering my voice hollow and tinned. Even casual speech in these suits sounded processed, prepackaged, sterile. Overhead, 3 Scry 9 drones shimmered in and out of my HUD. They floated on unseen tethers, their sensor rings blinking fractal geometries, semi-autonomous heuristic nodes designed to scan for pressure, chemical residue, even hallucination indexes. One had recently flagged Pota's laugh as an unclassified vocal anomaly. Another claimed it detected a staircase spiraling downward through 700 meters of unbroken ocean. We were instructed not to call the blinking symbols language. They were data geometries. They mapped. They did not speak. The inner lock door cycled open with a groan. Dr. Calvin Drexler stepped through. His gloves were pitch black, his face paler than the bulkhead paint. While the rest of us wore patchwork coveralls stitched by subcontractors, Drexler kept his sleeves bare. Authority by omission. He carried a matte black case the size of a trauma kit, sealed with lead shielding and a Soviet sickle barely intact on the clasp. Mr. Noak, Mr. Zakovsky. His voice had a cadence, measured urgency in half beats, not command, contained anticipation. Your courier run, director class seal intact. Do not open it until Deacon. The case felt heavier than its mass, dense with implication. The rumors, even before we left Norway, had already circulated. A Typhoon-class submarine entombed beneath glacial overhang, unlogged and unacknowledged. Cold War ghost ship, crew presumed dead, final diary sealed in resin and silence. If the Soviets documented what they'd found, what they'd locked away, then the truth sat inside this case, perhaps written in tight, neat Cyrillic, or in something stranger, shorthand invented for thoughts too fragile for grammar. Understood, I said. Drexler's eyes lingered on my visor a second too long. Not a stare, an assessment, as if gauging whether I still fit inside the silhouette he'd assigned me. A soft tone chimed through the corridor. My HUD pulsed with a notification. Searlock deviation, baseline 0.3 microunits. Nothing to worry about. Everyone's stress markers spiked before a dive. We moved into the mini sub-berth. Callisto waited like a partially hatched seed, chrome veins of fueling cables snaking into its hull. 2 seats inside a bubble cockpit. No room for error or comfort. I stowed the sealed case behind my seat, clipped Pota's harness, and pinged the bridge. Callisto to Verge, requesting path clearance. Path verified, the AI responded, voice clipped and flattened by shipboard protocols. Maintain null sonar until 50 meters. Null sonar, because full ping disturbed entities we hadn't yet agreed were alive. We slipped the berth, thrusters whispering as the sub detached from the docking clamps. Light from Verge's hull lamps fell away within seconds. Outside, only violet smear of bioluminescent algae traced our descent. I read off coordinates for the log. Pota stared out the viewport into the dark. Something deep and structural thrummed in the cockpit, a vibration I felt more in molars than ears. When I was a kid, Pota said suddenly, I thought the ocean floor must be relieved, that no one could see its secrets. And now? I asked. Now I think it's lonely. He smiled at his own sentiment, but his eyes didn't leave the void. Loneliness is human, I said. The ocean is geologic. We passed the lip of the trench. The Soviet sub appeared below like a sunken cathedral wedged in shale, the Shark 7. Typhoon class, though it looked larger, swollen by time and pressure. Spotlights revealed Cyrillic lettering faded with rust. Braca had claimed no hull breach. Pota repeated the observation with reverence. He sees chapels in bulkheads, I said. Braca's reverence turned rivets into liturgy. We docked at the aft hatch. Salvage teams had cleared the seal hours earlier. My suit hissed in depressurization. Inside, the corridors of Shark 7 felt tilted, as if the submarine had forgotten how gravity worked. Emergency lighting still pulsed red across ceiling panels. Somewhere forward, a Bulwick reactor still glowed, stubborn and unblinking. The air tasted of tannins, like a library left in a flood. We passed through a containment door with a multilingual warning. The English version read oddly poetic. Seal 5 status. Physical lock irrelevant. Someone had scratched a phrase beneath it in Russian. I stored it for later translation. We followed chalk arrows toward the command center, markings left by the advanced crew. I noted anomalies like breathing, docking ring reinforced after manufacture, cable channels retrofitted, vent grates that dripped condensation upward. One ventilation panel flexed when brushed, not metal, organic. Pota recorded officer names etched into rusted plaques. Each name returned with a delay, as if the sub listened in slower time. We reached the command center. Emil Braca stood on a ladder, photographing the ceiling. This room is broader than the deck plan, he said. She expands when no one's watching. Rooms don't expand, I said flatly. He traced a chalk arc on the floor where metal met something soft. Mathematics disagrees, he said. There's curvature here that should have crushed the frame. Logbook first, Pota said, practically vibrating. Then architecture. Drexler authorized the seal release remotely. Pota opened the case. Inside, a thick ledger, resin-wrapped and laced with frozen salt. Russian cursive crawled across the first page. I leaned in, activated internal record. Begin translation. Pota cleared his throat. 9th January 1984. Typhoon-class transport. Shark 7 enters Polar Trench Delta Cran on directive of Project Morosco. Entity on board remains sedate. Neural coral sample V-alpha-1 responds to low-frequency HIM patterns. HIM patterns, I interrupted. That's not metaphor. Not in Soviet reports. He nodded. Crew exhibit identical dreams of a spiral well. We are instructed not to document subjective phenomena. They wrote it anyway. I switched to shorthand, annotating margins in Polish reflex. Pota's voice softened. Repeat protocol. It does not wish to escape. It wishes to be found. A tremor passed through the deck. A heartbeat. My visor flashed white. Neuroaberrant state detected. Subject Zakovsky. I reached out. He flinched. I'm fine, he said, but his gloved hand clung to the page like it might try to leave. Preliminary pass complete, I reported to Drexler. Content viable. Zakovsky stable silence. Then, containment chamber integrity downgraded. Return to Verge. Braca en route. I closed the book, slid it back into its case. Pota secured the clasps. Above us, the nearest drone tilted. Its lens jittered. HUD flagged. Unknown sound detected -23 decibels. I heard nothing, until I felt it, a vibration through bone marrow. Not sound, suggestion. A phrase formed inside me, fully understood before I knew the words. "You are a door." Pota turned. "Did you say something?" "No." He held my gaze a second longer. Then we moved. The corridor felt longer on return. At a junction, a mirrored panel showed our reflections. Mine lagged by half a second, staring forward while my head turned. I didn't mention it. Callisto undocked. Verge rose into view like a bunker of lights in the ocean's throat. Inside the decontamination bay, mist hissed over our suits. The logbook passed through a radiation-sealed box. My helmet seals cycled open. The air aboard Verge tasted of antiseptic and copper. Drexler arrived, bloodshot and calm. "Doctor." "Drexler." He raised a hand. The cryo casing around our guest cracked from within. "The prisoner is now unaccounted for." He said it like a line-item report, but we both heard what he didn't say. "Your translation window just narrowed, Mr. Noak. Find something useful before it finds us." We treated the diary like it was a record. It was a mirror. We thought we were decoding it. In truth, it was measuring us. On Verge's third deck, Lab 3 had been converted into a translation suite, formerly a galley, now lined with acoustic foam that reeked of scorched rubber and disinfectant. Inside, we worked under timed shifts, 2 hours translation, 4 of attempted sleep, another 2 of review. Not rest. Not anymore. Not since the breach alert. The logbook had been quarantined physically, but its contents had already spread. The glyphs, the eye-dog symbols, bled across scan interfaces. Even the foam panels warped subtly, like heat pressing words into synthetic skin. We projected high-resolution scans onto the tabletop monitors, but Pota insisted the original stay within arm's reach, unlatched, exposed. He wore cotton gloves, the kind used in archival labs, treated the ledger like a holy relic. His eyes tracked the cursive with increasing fluency, and something else. Affection. "January 17th, he murmured, tracing a passage. They shifted cipher structure from 4-track to symbol frequency inversion. His tone held excitement, as though deciphering a buried love letter. "Every third noun morphs into an eye-dog here," he said. "A transitional grammar, like the language is terraforming itself." "Or it's collapsing," I replied, marking out a rough translation in my own notebook. "Don't romanticize decay. Collapse is rarely generous. It can be instructive." He smiled, not to provoke, just to soften the trespass. I ignored it and focused on correction. Context markers, article patterns, falsifiable structure. But the final sentence refused translation. Spiral feeds on unspent intentions. I left it untouched. Better to preserve metaphor than mistake it for truth. During our breaks, we reviewed drone telemetry. Unit 12, which should have been a disposable polymer scout with a sonar array, returned with a scan that defied instruction. A staircase, it claimed, etched into the exterior hull of the submarine, carved not into metal, but into the water itself. 30 meters of descent before battery loss. The footage was near black, corrupted with texture noise that moved like stone in slow motion. Emil watched the playback beside us, notebook against his chest like a breviary. "If the hull adapts," he whispered, "we ought to document its liturgy." He'd begun treating the vessel not as artifact but organism, not as machine but scripture. His sketches shifted accordingly, cross-sections bending in ways that violated Euclidean space. He labeled alcoves as naves, corridors as choirs. He claimed certain rooms responded to attention. "Liturgy requires congregation," I muttered. "She has one," he said, and meant us. The dream arrived during our next off shift. I was descending a spiral ramp. Not stone, salt crystal. its surface slick with gravity that pressed sideways instead of down. I held onto rail spines of calcified coral, tried not to fall. At the center, a well, black not from lack of light, but because light had been uninvited. Above me, Pota hummed, a lullaby in broken arithmetic, off-meter, patterned, but incorrectly. I woke drenched, caught sensors triggered. Emergency amber lights flickered without system prompt. My echo mesh implant vibrated. Incoming private channel. Zakrovsky here. You awake? His voice sounded layered, like two feeds synced imperfectly. You're outside, green band, I sub-vocalized. Time's off again. I needed to log a phrase. Before it fades, he sent a voice packet, 3 syllables wrapped in static. I didn't recognize the words, but the cadence matched the lullaby from my dream. When did you record it? I didn't. A pause. I just woke with the sound in my throat. I logged it. Echo burn, a delayed memory phenomenon from previous abyssal cases. This time it was personal. Next morning, Drexler called a briefing in the dome capsule, transparent ceiling above showing Antarctic Sea, like obsidian threaded with frost. He brought a device. Boxy, pitted steel housing, dull magnetic tape coiled inside. The Black Echo recorder, he announced. Cold War tech, designed to harvest infrasonics, including what the Soviets theorized were precognitive harmonics, sounds that precede thought. He set it on the table like an offering. 5 seconds of capture, spectral analysis only. Playback remains prohibited. Pota's pupils dilated. 5 seconds is still dangerous. Recorder is one way, Drexler said. Emil circled it reverently. A reliquary of future sound, he whispered. I stood arms crossed, thumb grazing my override pin. You think the entity will perform on cue? I asked. It already has, Drexler answered, if Morosco's archives are accurate. He gestured to our vitals. All baseline drifted. Neurochemical indicators spiked or flatlined unpredictably. 0900 hours, minimal crew present. Mr. Zakowski, monitor signal gain. Mr. Nowak, note emergent patterns. Inside yourself. At 8:59, the capsule sealed. Pota counted Hertz values like prayer beads. The reel turned, nothing for 4 seconds but ocean static. On the 5th, every surface hummed. My HUD shook. Scry 9 false-colored the air, a mist of infrared waveforms. My jaw vibrated with non-audible pressure. I heard laughter, genderless, curious. The recorder's needles showed nothing. Then the words arrived, not through ears, but cartilage. You arrive incomplete but amenable. I slammed the abort. Pota didn't move, eyes wide, fingers still on the dial. I pulled him back. The reel stopped. Drexler burst in, checked our vitals, ignored our stares. He took the tape, slid it into a lead sleeve, said nothing. Later, I found him in the corridor and whispered, "It spoke." He replied without pause, "Not officially." The diary stalled, its sentences fragmented, pronouns reversed, subjects vanished mid-entry, glyphs aligned with Pota's audio fragment. He insisted on fidelity to the source, claimed comprehension even when translations failed coherence. He began to recite entries aloud in Russian, but claimed no knowledge of Russian. The drones started tagging his speech as hostile dialects. He stormed out of Lab 3. I found him an hour later in Audio Bay 2, alone, kneeling beside an empty comms channel. He whispered to static. The syllables contained trills and fricatives beyond human range. His throat somehow produced them anyway. "What are you saying?" I asked. "I'm adjusting signal gating." His hands rested nowhere near the console. "What did you ask it? If loneliness is still geological?" He smiled faintly. It answered. "Loneliness is the gap between resonance and source." A moment later, the monitor resolved into a single syllable, It sounded like his name in reverse. I shut the power. That night, his bunkmate reported he spoke for 40 minutes in his sleep, eyes open, alternating between his own voice and another, deeper register. The language resembled archaic Russian, too old for post-war dialect. His heart did not beat once during the episode. Days passed. Translation gave way to transcription. The diary seemed to anticipate itself, as though pages knew what we'd say before we'd read them. The entity, if that's what it was, no longer needed permission. It needed articulation. Mid-shift, we returned to the submarine. The cryo chamber stood breached. No body, no footprints, only a growth, spiral stairs, shaped like teeth made of translucent coral glass, hovering inches from the floor, vibrating, defying physics. Scry 9 flagged the structure biological, unclassified. Emil knelt before it. "It's a floor plan," he said in awe. "Self-written architecture. Back away." "She's not breached," he said. "She's birthing volume." My echo mesh flared. Unknown text, iDog scroll. I hit manual mute. Drexler's voice broke through static. "Theta, fallback. Containment failure." I remembered. Theta was sabotage protocol, triggered when reason decays. Last resort directive. Only one operative holds that mandate. I knew who. Coral fragments began orbiting the structure. Pota trembled, lifted his recorder. Emil traced air near the spiral like it was sacred geometry. Then power flickered. Status lights went black. We ran. Inside my helmet, a new phrase arrived. "You arrive incomplete but useful." I no longer knew if the voice belonged to the entity, the submarine, or a version of myself now operating outside my consent. Translation window had closed. We were inside the text now. "They think I survived. That's what the reports will say. A survivor, an isolated neural echo." One man pulled from the wreckage, language fracturing at the edge of coherence. "They'll frame it as a contamination story, incident sealed, threat neutralized, vector contained. Clean categories. But the truth is messier than survival. The truth vibrates deeper than grammar." I didn't walk out of that ice. I was carried forward, sentence by sentence, into something unfinished. After containment collapsed, Verge's ballast screamed. Alarm harmonics like cathedral bells played underwater. Drexler's face appeared on every monitor, bleached by emergency CRTs. The reactor was venting. Not an accident, not a glitch. Deliberate scuttle. Theta protocol. Initiated. He never said I initiated, never used first person. I don't think he knew how anymore. I moved, not from choice, but because paralysis already belonged to her, the crypt, the vessel, the listener. Motion was all I had left. Emil intercepted me at Corridor Junction 7. He carried reels of Soviet marking tape, pupils blown wide with reverence. "The new corridor opened," he said. "A nave. It won't map unless we consecrate it." "Consecrate isn't an engineering term," I said, but I followed him anyway. We found the spiral corridor behind Supply Bay 4, where once there had been oxygen tanks. Now, a tunnel, curving steadily rightward, ribs metallic and moist. Moisture didn't bead. It flowed, moving upstream toward unseen heights. Emil unspooled the tape. It bore faded Cyrillic, salvaged from the submarine. "Boundaries define worship," he whispered. "The vessel is remembering its first liturgy." When he crossed the threshold, the floor shimmered. Texture rippled like mercury struck by music. He dropped to one knee, placed his palm flat, whispered a Slavonic benediction my mother once taught me phonetics for. My suit alarms howled, then went silent. I felt my heartbeat relocate, thumping a half-meter to the left of my chest. I pulled him back. Sound snapped back into existence. Above us, blast doors slammed. Drexler was herding us. into quarantine or towards something else. Emile looked up at me with saltwater breath. She offers rooms in exchange for memory. He handed me his notebook, new sketches, cross-sections of verge warped into vertebrae, each corridor labeled not with numbers, but phrases: lament, revelation, threshold. I pocketed the book. I should have burned it. I didn't. I found Pota in the primary comm junction, beneath a tangle of conduit cables. Barefoot, shirt gone. His spine was blooming, calcified ridges flaring from his vertebrae like coralized thorns. Blood threaded along the roots, but he didn't notice. He rocked gently, humming the lullaby. Only now the song had resolved. No more looping measures, no Mobius stutter. It had become complete. The consoles around him flashed red. Auto-transcription software tried and failed to process his murmurs. Unicode errors, glyphs matching the logbook's eyedogs. "Pota," I said. My voice hit him late, like gravity delayed. He opened his eyes, red-rimmed, calm. "Echo gap," he said. "Necessary delay between want and have." I reached for my override pin. One press and I could force a blackout. "Seize control. Stop this." Instead, I asked, "What does it want now?" He smiled, not with joy, with recognition. "It gathers voices to finish its sentence." Then, as if presenting an infant, he held out his handheld recorder. "It left something for you. Only you." I didn't take it. I killed the console. Main breaker slammed. Screens died. His voice fell silent, but silence still moved. I could feel it, like a pressure in my skin. Cadence turned into temperature. Through comms, Drexler barked, "Seal all environmental hatches. Reactor vent in 5. Pota would die there. Slurry would fill the deck. Superheated algal purge, sterilizing him and any unfinished language in his blood. I leaned close. "Drexler's theta," I whispered. "Do you understand your leverage?" "Theta is just a fulcrum," Pota said. "The lever is comprehension." He pressed stop on the recorder, placed it beside him like an heirloom. "Go, Yannick. Translate us forward." So I did. Drexler was waiting outside the reactor core. The corridor was trembling, floor grates clattering with mechanical dread. He held the black echo tape, scrubbed blank, magnetically sterilized. "You enacted theta without counsel," I said. His breath fogged the air. Containment was always theater. I maintained narrative integrity. Integrity needs truth. He laughed, quiet, lips barely moved. "Truth is amplitude," he said. "Too loud and it liquefies cognition." He tapped the tape. This was a master key. 5 seconds of it, reorganized steel, bone, memory. Imagine 30 seconds topside. He had sealed off ballast decks. He intended to drown the tape, and us, before signal reached the surface. "Help me scuttle," he said. And for once I heard real fear. Not for himself, for what might survive. I didn't answer. I pulled out Emile's notebook, showed him the final diagram, a spiral corridor leading upward, toward Verge's emergency beacon, a path not listed in any schematic. "At the apex," I said, "there's a symbol, half eye, half speaker." "It carved an egress," he said, "exactly why the beacon must go." He turned, keyed the reactor console. Status flipped from teal to red. Vent cycle. 4 minutes. So I betrayed him. I rammed him into the panel. He struck back, trained, sharp, but I had surprise. I ripped the tape free, cracked a containment foam canister across his hands. Chemical snow sealed him in place. He didn't scream, just recited Latin under his breath. I ran. The new corridor welcomed me. Walls glistened with moist light. Each step felt rehearsed, like the future had already memorized me. Reflections lagged behind, then snapped back into sync. At the top, the hatch irised open. Inside, the Hesper beacon chamber, cylindrical, coils circling a copper-inlaid floor. Candles burned impossibly, wicks soaked in Bowick Regent. Heat shimmered. Emile stood there in an officer's coat. "She guided you," he said. "The archive rewrites geometry to escort its archivist." "We need the beacon," I said, "to warn the surface." He smiled gently. "Warning is denial's cousin." From his coat he drew the veil lens, obsidian edge, center like smoke. "Look through." I remembered the inscription. "It helps it see you." Still, I looked. The room reconfigured. Sound became shape. Glyphs unfurled midair. One spiral, same as Pota's last dream, expanded into branching syntax. Self-symmetrical. Alive. Each branch a sentence already understood. Not constructed, discovered. The entity wasn't a speaker. It was a library, eager to lend. "She needs a mouth," Emile said. "You already speak." Then, klaxons. Countdown. Reactor steam climbing below. I keyed the beacon. Systems activated. Coils thrummed. The glyph hovered before me. I removed my helmet. The condensation kissed my cheeks. "Speak," Emile breathed. So I did. The new language filled my mouth. Tasted like salt and thunder and every secret I'd ever swallowed. When the beacon fired, light knifed through the ocean, upward, toward whatever still listened. After, I stood in the silence. Emile prostrate, his eyes glazed with sea frost, veil lens shattered beside him. Over comms, Drexler's voice. "Warn, still alive. Surface crew received your burst. They're inbound. 3 hours. Help me finish Plan B." "Which scripture is Plan B?" I asked. "The one where Judas volunteers for crucifixion." He held up the black echo tape, magnetically scrubbed, ashes of the payload. "It's gone," he said. "All that remains is what's inside you." Then I saw it, the shift in his voice. He believed now, believed and feared. "Archive your version," he said. "Translate it loud enough to survive editing." He showed me the shaft. Old melt tunnel. Drones had mapped a route to the ice shelf. I climbed. At midpoint, the walls began to breathe. At 3/4, my breath aligned with the corridor's pulse. For a second, I felt my blood become punctuation. At the exit, I found Pota, sitting cross-legged on a crate, barefoot, a spiral etched into quartz between his fingers. He handed it to me. "Carry this," he said. "Voices migrate, so will I." Then he smiled, not as a man overtaken, but as one finally complete. I left him behind. At the surface, I triggered the strobe. A rescue craft came. Orange suits, rifles, scanners. They think I survived. But I didn't. I translated forward. In the repurposed observatory, they've locked me in above the Arctic Circle. I watch auroras twist like raw grammar. They ask for full disclosure. I give them safe prefixes, tame suffixes. I withhold conjunctions. Conjunctions are dangerous. Some nights they catch me sleep-talking. Recordings show only oceanic static. They call it nonsense. They don't understand. Nonsense is camouflage, big enough for futures. I sent Emile's notebook to Warsaw, addressed to my mother's old mentor. He'll recognize the sketches. I suspect they redraw themselves mid-transit. Learning, preparing. I keep the quartz spiral under my tongue during interrogations. When warm, it vibrates, like a dial tone. I am not just a survivor. I am echo and source, translator and vector. This morning, the horizon flared violet red, a color that does not belong to this season or this latitude. I drew a glyph on the observation window. The frost welcomed it, crystallized into depth, into a door. Somewhere below, water rearranges itself into new architecture. Somewhere above, analysts pore over transcripts, unaware that the margins lean toward them. One day they'll read a sentence that understands them first. One day they will step through. incomplete but amenable.